I would see myself doing the dishes. And while I looked at myself doing the dishes, I would walk into the room. So now I'm 3 times in the same room, and I would kind of like cut myself down with an axe.
Hello and welcome to the Almost False podcast, where I interview regular people with incredible stories. I have a very interesting interview for you today. It's with a man who was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic. And I'm not talking about a little bit, I mean to the point that he wasn't able to function in society at all. I wanted to know what it's like to have paranoid schizophrenia, so I asked him all kinds of questions in order to understand what it feels like in your mind to have this condition. If you've never had it, it'll probably give you insight and a lot more compassion for those who live through that. The craziest thing about it, though, is that he no longer has any kind of paranoia or schizophrenia, but you'll have to stick around to see how that miracle came to be. For now, let's start by exploring the first signs that something about him was not like every other kid. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the life of Klaus Nielsen.
My very first memory was when I was in kindergarten before going to school and stuff. And I believe must have been around 6-something years old. And like a lot of my memories kind of like is in still pictures in a sense. And I heard somewhere that like if you remember mostly in still pictures and stuff, it's because you kind of like have traumatic things happened, and therefore you're kind of like trying to block it out or something. I don't know entirely if that is true or not, but it seems logical in a sense. But I have like in a sense 2 pictures in my mind, or like a situation in my mind where I thought that I was the cause of another child breaking its neck. And I was kind of like standing on this plaything with a rope. And it's like back in the 80s, so there was not the same kind of security and protecting that there is nowadays. So, but I was standing holding a rope, and then because I thought it would be fun, another one was climbing up holding that rope, and I would let go because that was fun. And in my mind, that boy fell down and broke his neck. And then like I have that memory, and then later I see myself in a different part in the kindergarten looking towards this playground thing where people is, oh, something happened kind of like thing. And I've been sure for a lot of, I don't know how many years, but for several years that I had that, I was the cause of somebody breaking its neck, or a child breaking its neck. And it was not until like several years later when I met that boy and I recognized him and realized that that didn't happen. So that's kind of like the first time that I have something in a period where I must be around 6 years old, that something was not right. And the second time was about, and I'm guessing 10 to 12 years old, because that's around the time when I was a Boy Scout. And at that time, I kind of like had thoughts that I should hang myself. But it was not that I was suicidal in any way. It was more like I just have thoughts and thinkings about it happening. And the thing with my schizophrenia is that I kind of like have thoughts about things, have to do things, and then I visualize it and see it in pictures in my mind. And I remember that I should hang myself, and I also can still recall the image of me hanging out of my bedroom window in a red rope that me and my brother had. So, and I don't know if it's a funny thing, but a funny thing is that I also remember the reasoning I had not to hang myself. And it was because I didn't know how to tie a noose. And for me, it was like, well, I mean, if you have to do something, you have to do it properly. And I mean, you can't hang yourself if you can't hang yourself with a noose. I mean, that doesn't make sense. So, I mean, I can't tie a noose, so I can't hang myself. So I'm happy I was a lousy Boy Scout.
I am happy too. This sounds really hard. So the first example that you gave with the thinking that you broke the other kid's neck, you said it was at 6. I think the other one was later, around 10 or 12. I forget if you mentioned the ages exactly. Yeah. But I wonder, how frequent was it for you to have thoughts like that? Do you remember more, or was it just these 2 incidents?
As a child, that's what I remember. I have an overall feeling of not being wanted and being bullied, and that other children didn't want to play with me. but that was not true either. I had a conversation with an old teacher at one point and talked to her about these things, and she said, well, it was not that the other children didn't want to play with me, it was more that I didn't want to play with them. So, and there was also some other episodes that she told me about, like how I would, in the class, I would sit and kind of like zone out, and she could just, with her experience as a teacher, I guess she could see that I didn't follow what happened. I was sitting in my own little world. So it's not that like I had that experience in a sense, but for me, must have been isolating myself in my own mind and just playing with myself in my mind, or something like that, and just in a sense having the view of the experience that the rest of the world was against me.
To me, it's very interesting to be able to talk to you and to talk about these things, because your reality at that point was not reality. Like, you were living these things as if they were true, and you were experiencing them as if they actually happened, but they didn't happen. And so that brings a lot of questions that I don't even know how to ask to you, and I don't know that you would have the answers anyway. But what I'm curious about is, how did this affect you in school and in the way that you interacted with people?
That's a good question. I think that I mostly internalized all my thinking and stuff. I didn't really express it. Also later, I have like some old notes from all the different schools and things I went to, and through it all, it just says like, oh, Klaus is well functioning, he has friends, and all these things. I mean, in a sense, I couldn't really recognize that description of me through the school years. So in some sense, I've been kind of like flying under the radar through all of school. Again, does that mean that I was sick at that point? I don't know. But there has just been moments in school where maybe I was not completely schizophrenic, but at least I was different. Like my old teacher that I talk with, she remembers me as being different from other children. So again, whether I was completely schizophrenic at 6 or 12 and stuff, I don't know. Maybe just very fragile and easily influenced by certain things that could have been developing later.
Right. And I think a natural question to ask as well is, did you have any issues at home? Because that would be normal if someone is at home and is hearing about these things or watching movies to have thoughts that are similar, or maybe abusive parents. Did you have any of that in your childhood?
So like my parents were lovely. I mean, they have some baggage and things that they were, they grew up with. And the biggest kind of, in a sense, issue is that my mother, because she was never told that she was loved, had difficulties to say it with words that she loved me. So that is also something that has affected me in some sense. But it was a lovely home, didn't need anything or was missing anything. Food on the table, no abuse, no alcohol, no drugs, nothing at all. Like just a typical regular home.
Okay, well, let's actually go through the years. So we talked about more childhood. Let's get to the teenage years. So the two episodes, well, you mentioned actually more than two, but the things that you mentioned so far, it's always like really negative things that you remember or that you have thoughts of. So how did this evolve when you became a teenager?
I just, in a sense, didn't really feel comfortable anywhere. Like wherever I was, there was just something that was wrong. I started to drink. In Denmark, you're allowed to drink fairly early, legally. It's not like in other places where you have to be like 21 or something like that. But I started to drink when I was 15, and I would often end up like, because alcohol kind of like enhance the emotions that you already have. So if you're happy, you get really happy. If you're angry, you get really angry, and if you're sad, you get really sad. So I would often end up crying, because I was just feeling like empty on the inside or really sad. So that was kind of like one thing that kind of like often that would end up me crying after consuming alcohol. Another thing was, and I don't remember how old I was, but I must have been like 17 or something like that, 16, 17, I believe. after boarding school, I went to Italy with a school, and when we had to go home from that trip, I didn't want to go home because I was feeling terrible at home. Kind of like in a weird way, when I was away from Denmark on travels, it was like I didn't have any problem. Everything was fine because I was away, and I didn't want to go home. And I ended up getting myself drunk in order to go on the plane. So that was kind of like one incident that happened. Another one happened. I just turned 19, I believe, and I was traveling with my brother. We went to Israel, actually. It didn't have anything to do with Christianity or anything. It was just like some pen pals that my mom had down there that we visited for some reason. But it was just me and my brother. And the night before we were traveling home, there was a police car that came driving in front of us with no warning or signal or anything at all. And our driver kind of like reacted, turned the wheel, and drove into a wall. And my brother ended up being put in a, what do you call it? Is it like a medical induced coma or something for 3 days in order to survive? He didn't have his seatbelt on, and I just sprained like my wrist. But for me, that was like the best thing that could happen. I was in a sense happy that it happened because that meant that I could postpone going home for a little while, because like the day after we had to travel and we couldn't. So I don't remember if we were there like another week or almost a week or something until my brother was fit to go home. But it was the best thing that could happen. But I also had like a complete mental breakdown, and I was I walked around in the hospital and blessed people and, or like said like, you will respect my authority, and like a quote from South Park, and thinking I was God or something like that. It was a bit crazy. So in the morning, a psychiatrist came and asked me, do you know who you are? I was like, yes, I know. Okay. And she was like, I think you should have something checked out. Just, I know. So at that point, I knew there was something.
I think that puts things in perspective for someone listening to your story, because your brother almost died, and because of how horrible it was, like how much you didn't want to go home, that you interpreted as good news, which to me explains the amount of distress that you were in. So I'm happy that we actually talked about this, and because I think it helps me understand, and if it helps me, I don't think I'm the only one that is helped by it. So you said that you realized that something was off. You, I guess, booked an appointment with a psychiatrist after this thing in the hospital. So when was your appointment, and when were you officially diagnosed with schizophrenia?
Well, now I will tell the story now about like why I think that my memory is maybe a little off in a sense, because that was kind of like why I went to the doctor. So I kind of like had this incident or this experience where I would stand and do my dishes, and I would, like, from a third person perspective, from behind of myself, in vision and pictures in my mind, I would see myself doing the dishes. And while I looked at myself doing the dishes, I would walk into the room. So now I'm like 3 times in the same room, and I would kind of like cut myself down with an axe. And for me, that was just like normal. So I was just doing the dishes, blah, 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 and then like, oh, okay, and then just continue. So this episode, this thing, I told to a friend, and she told me that that's not normal. I had to go to the doctor with it. So I was like, okay. I didn't want to go to my own doctor because I was paranoid that he would tell my parents, and I didn't want them to be worried. So I wanted to wait until I moved to Svendborg. Now, the thing is that I remember sitting at the doctor's and telling him this story about chopping myself down with an axe, and him telling me that, oh yeah, that's not normal. We have to look at it. But that thing didn't happen at that time. Like, so I went into treatment, and I was diagnosed paranoid schizophrenic. And then a year and a half after I got my diagnosis, that is actually in my second apartment after I moved out, that is when that episode happened. So that's kind of like why I don't really know, like, in what order did things happen? Because I'm so sure that was the reason I went to the doctor, but it couldn't have happened at that time. So I was 19 when I had this appointment with the doctor. when I was in Israel, and it was like in August or something. And when we got home, I kind of like got a new appointment, and there I kind of like had some talks with a psychologist, and he kind of like did some different tests, like psychological tests and things, and ended with me getting the diagnosis of being schizophrenic.
And how was it for you? Because I've spoken to a few people over the years that have been diagnosed with schizophrenia. None of them really had the same experiences as you, all different. But when you received the diagnosis, was it a crushing label for you, or was it somewhat of a relief to know that there was a name to put to this thing?
It was both. To begin with, it was a crushing label. It was like, oh, yeah, okay, so that's the reason why nobody likes me. That's the reason why everything sucks and all these things. But later on, I kind of like felt peace with it because, I mean, I could then know that, okay, so this is why things is happening and this is why I am sick, or the things that I experience. So there was an explanation to it, and I could get help as well. So like one thing that really helped me in my life is that I recognized that I was sick. And therefore, and I think it comes from me actually at 3 years old having asthma. So if I didn't take medication and stuff, I couldn't breathe, so I would have the feeling of dying and stuff. So I think that was a good thing for me in that sense, that when even though I felt terrible about having to take medications and stuff, that I would still do it because in my mind, in a sense, I knew that medication is good for me, it's helping me, and therefore I would take it and ask for help when I could get it and needed it.
I'm curious, when you first got diagnosed, what did the doctor say was the cause of this? If anything at all, did he or she say what was causing this schizophrenia?
No, not that I remember. I think there are like different ideas and theories about what can do it or can make it happen. Again, some are maybe predisposed to developing it. Normally, it shows itself around the 18, 19 years old at that time. Some is because people do drugs or something that kind of like mess up your mind. I knew a guy who tried to smoke weed or something, and the first time he did it, he got like a psychosis, like a weed psychosis. The first time he tried it, and was schizophrenic after that. But I don't remember being told anything specific because it's difficult to say. It can be different things that kind of like opens up to it.
Right. I asked the question because I did study psychology for quite a few years in college, and I remember them saying that they have no idea what the cause is. And when we go through the entirety of your story, I think people will be able to make their own conclusions on what they think the cause was. But at least I wanted to know what the doctor had said. But you talked about treatment, and so can you explain to me what the treatments were? As soon as you got diagnosed, what did you get put on?
So I started to do I got medication for it, and I don't know if the names are the same in English or whatnot, but the first drug I got was called Zyprexa, and it is like an antipsychotic drug that works really well, and it was fine for me for a period, and then I went to and took something else called Leponex, and that one is a very like tough drug or harsh or whatever we call it. So it would like both of, like the Leponex was like the big brother to the Zyprexa, and Zyprexa when I started to do that, I would sleep 12 hours a day, and I gained like 30 kilos in 3 months. I would also drool a lot, and I think that was like the most of the side effects that I had. So when I went to the Liponex, that one is kind of like it had also a side effect of it could change I think the red or either the red or the white blood cells. It could go in and have an effect. So I had to take a blood test like every month while on that. And then I also had something called Troxal, which was like some small brown pills to help me relax if I kind of like couldn't sleep. I remember there was like one time yeah, I think it's a bit funny. I had a very heated discussion with George W. Bush on live Dutch television in my mind, and I couldn't sleep, even though I had taken my other medication. Normally, it would take like 20 minutes, and then I would just sleep, but I just couldn't relax in my mind. So I took some of those pills, and that helped me relax, and then I could sleep. But yeah, that was like a little funny thing, being on live Dutch television.
That is an interesting story. Just for the Americans following, 30 kilos is about 65 pounds, I think. So 65 pounds in less than a month. Maybe that gives you a better idea. So what did the medication do for you? What kind of impact did it have? Did it help? Can you maybe explain how that was?
To begin with, I had the diagnosis schizophrenia, but later on it was changed to paranoid schizophrenia because I also got a lot of paranoia later on. I don't know how much explicit it was in the beginning, but at least it became a lot more clear later on. So my medication did something for my schizophrenia. So it helped me relax. So kind of like, it's like the emotions of me was like either going all the way up and down, up and down, and up and down like this. And the medication would kind of like make these things like less, so that the wavelengths of the emotional ups and downs would be less. But it never really did anything to my paranoia at all. So it would just not it would not remove all my thinking and my visions and things, but I would be more at peace in a sense on the inside, instead of being all the way up and down emotionally.
Right. I've heard from a lot of people that have taken medications, whether it's for schizophrenia. I think antidepressants have a similar effect, though I've never taken them. So this is not from personal experience, but from me hearing from other people that it's kind of an emotional numbness that comes whenever you do that. Like it numbs your emotion. It doesn't change the issues at all, but it just numbs them.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can help for other people. It can also have a double-edged sword effect. But yeah, you talked about the symptoms, so I would love to get into that. How did the symptoms evolve following your diagnosis in your early 20s and as you grew up?
The schizophrenia that I experienced, the way that I experienced it, is that I didn't really hear like audible voices about terrible things or anything, but it was more that I had thoughts that I should do things, and as soon as I had the thoughts, I visualized it and saw it in my mind in pictures. And it was always violent things. It was like me killing people, raping women. I also, one time, I had the thoughts that I should shoot a baby off in a catapult, and saw it. I would also, like, if I walked around, I would imagine or seeing things blow up. And it was never like really like solid imagery that I would see, but it was kind of like if I kind of like have my hand in front of my face, I can see the hand and things at the same time. So there was this like overlaying thing that was kind of like how I saw it. So it's not like really a solid thing, but things would blow up, clouds would rotate around if I look up into the sky. One time I was driving on a road, and on the side of the road there were a lot of parked cars, and all of them were kind of like double, so they were also parked in front of us. So as I was driving, I was not the driver, but I was at the passenger. But we would drive through all these cars, which was a interesting experience to kind of like crash into cars all the way up through a road. So I would always kind of like have headphones on with music and look down, and to avoid noises that could trigger things, and also not seeing things, because when I looked up, often I would imagine things in my mind. So it's kind of like, so that's kind of like with the noise thing, so I wouldn't have things trigger. But I do remember that I've had some weird conversations with people that doesn't make sense if it was not some kind of voices that I heard. There was one time I talked with a friend, and he told me that he was at a party. He went to the kitchen, and in the kitchen there was a guy having sex with a dog. And I was like, that sounds weird. And I believed that was true because I heard him say it. And some years ago, I met him and I asked him, like, did that really happen? And he's like, oh, no. And I talked about this story to others, like, hey, this crazy one, you know. But in a sense, that also helped me in a way to forgive people that I felt angry towards, because did they treat me bad, or is it just my imagination and my thinking and my voice is what I hear? So it made it easier in that sense to forgive people later on. But that was kind of like mostly my schizophrenia. That was like always violent things, always bloody, or some kind of destruction and things that was not true. Yeah.
How did you live with that? Did that trigger fear inside of you whenever you would see these things? Did it become so normal that you were kind of just used to it and didn't really bother? Like, how did you deal with it?
It was just normal. It was just like, I mean, I got used to it in the sense where I just know, okay, I just have to look down into the ground and then walk, and then nothing will happen. And I have headphones on, and then I would just like drown in music, and I could just walk around, and it was fine. But that did not like do anything other than just, okay, it happened, and it's like, oh, okay, well, you know, carry on. So the paranoia things that I can explain now was much more influential on my life than the schizophrenia, in a sense, because all the vision and things that just happened, I mean, I just internalized. I never really acted out on it at all. I did have some like if feelings were too much, and I had to kind of like how do you say it, like blow off some steam or something I didn't know how to do, I would once in a while like self-harm, like I would cut myself to just get rid of things and relax in my mind, in a sense. And that happened a few times, but that was mainly my schizophrenia and those things that made that happen, in a sense. But my paranoia was kind of like uh, a completely different thing, where that would affect me much more in my behavior, and I couldn't really do anything to counter it. As I mentioned, like just hearing dogs bark would make me think that somebody's out to kill me. And that was like the main thing about my paranoia, was that something is out to kill me. Something wants to get rid of me. So especially when I was walking home at night and it was dark, I would almost always be convinced that there was somebody out to kill me. And like the paranoia would just like be this feeling of uncomfortable turmoil in my heart and in my stomach. And I had to go home. I have to go home. I have to go home. Like the only place that I could relax was if I went home and was in a place where I could feel safe. Like people, they could be fighting in a different place, and because I saw them fighting or just arguing, yelling at each other, immediately they want to kill me afterwards. But that could also mean that I could provoke it myself, in a sense, because every time I went out my front door, there would be a chance that I could get paranoid. And I knew that. And then I could be like hypersensitive to the possibility, and it could end with me actually ending up triggering it myself. It didn't happen that often, but it could happen, and it did happen a few times. Also knowing just as soon as I'm going to visit these friends, something can happen there, and I have to go home at once. So there was something always on my mind about that. I was afraid of crossing bridges unless I was in a car or in a bus, because this idea and the thought about walking over or taking the bicycle, I was too afraid, because I was sure that somebody would come and throw me over the side of the bridge. Driving cars was a challenge, because I've been in the car accident in Israel, so that sent a lot of fear in me. I was afraid at being at train stations sometimes, for fear of either pushing other people out in front of the train that other people will push me in front of the train, or that I would jump in front of the train. If I was in like on the top of a building and stuff, or tall places, I wouldn't go to near the edge to look down or anything, because even though that I could see that I was alone, I was convinced that suddenly there would be somebody there to push me over the side. Listening to the radio, if in the news they talked about some kind of potential supervolcano or a meteor somewhere out in the universe or something, immediately I would be afraid of, okay, the world will end, everybody will get killed. And the only place I felt safe was at home. And the only time that I've ever experienced anything at home was one day I was just in my apartment, and suddenly the thought came that there are snipers laying outside and want to shoot me. And immediately I just fell to the ground, and I crawled over to the window and put down the curtains, and then crawled over to the next window and put down the curtains. And I didn't have any curtains in my kitchen, so I called my mother. She lived like 20 minutes away in car, and she had to come and put something up, because I couldn't go out into the kitchen because they could see me and shoot me. So it is very irrational when it comes to the paranoia. The worst experience I've ever had with it was one night I'm on my way home, and I know that there are people who want to kill me, so I just have to get home. And then suddenly the thought come, they're waiting outside of my front door. So I was just in panic, because I have to get home, otherwise I will get killed. But as soon as I get home, they will kill me. So, and I think I had like 2 kilometers home. So the closer I came to home, the worse I just felt, like deep terror and fear of I'm going to die soon, just in a moment. And it didn't go away until I could see my front door and there was nobody there at all. So I kind of like, I normally like use an illustration to kind of explain the irrationality of it. So I'm a fairly huge person. So I'm like 6'2" or 188 centimeters tall. And now I'm weighing like 115 kilos, and that would be like 235, 40-ish pounds, I guess. And there was one time I was on a ferry, and there was this young lady, and I was like a head taller than her. She was at minimum, or some like half my size. I would easily be more than half her like weight, and I was terrified that she would throw me overboard. And it's like, it doesn't make sense, because like even if she tried, she probably wouldn't be able to lift me. And even if she could lift me, would she be able to kind of like lift me over the rails of a ferry? And would she be able to do it if I would resist her? And my size and stuff, that would be impossible. But still, the paranoia just made me like, she's going to kill me. I have to walk away from here. So it's just completely irrational. And there's like at least for me, I have not, until a late episode that we will come to at one point, but I've never been able to rationalize and explain my paranoia away. It would just completely take over my system, and I had to just go away and go to a place where I felt safe.
That sounds awful. It sounds like you live in a constant state of fear, which I can't imagine. I don't know that I want to imagine. There's one thing that I want to ask you right now. You talk about a lot of things you were afraid of happening to you, but you also mentioned some things you were afraid of doing yourself. And I wonder, did you have the desire to do these things? Like you talked about hurting people, or throwing people in front of a train. Did you have the desire to do that, or was that kind of thoughts that were just coming to you without you actually wanting to act out on them?
Most of the time, I didn't want to do it. It was just thoughts and visions that came. If there was somebody who treated me badly, I really wanted to hurt them. And there was this one guy, one point, he used my good will and stuff. It was like some money thing, and I couldn't get him to pay what he owed me and all kind of stuff. So I had this imagination, and I visualized how I would like crush all the bones in his fingers and in his arms and in his feet, so that every time that he moved around, he would regret that he messed with me, and the amount of money he owed me, I wanted to cut it into his forehead and make it like a horrible scar. So every time he looked himself in the mirror, he would regret messing with me. So that's the only time I remember really wanting to hurt somebody, but I never did it. And I'm happy that all the time that he said like, hey, I can't give you the money this month and stuff, that he did it over the phone, because I don't know how I would have reacted if he did it to my face.
So living in this state of constant fear, how did this impact your day-to-day life? Were you able, because the last age that we heard about was 19, were you able to graduate? Were you able to get a job, to keep a job? How was that?
Like what it mostly infected me was like on my family, for my mother having to talk with her son. I'm not a parent, but I can imagine it's terrible to have a call and say like, hey, there's somebody who wants to kill me. Can you come and put up some curtains in my kitchen? And also back to the self-harming part, I came to a point where I could resist harming myself, but then I would call either my mother or my sister, and then one of those two would kind of like distract me while the other one came down and removed everything from my apartment, knives, matches, so I wouldn't burn myself, cooking pots, pans, anything that I could use to harm myself. They would remove everything because I was afraid that I would harm myself. Now that does something to people. So it affected my family. And also like traveling, everything had to be scheduled around me having to sleep 12 hours. And like friends also have been affected in a sense. So like one thing that was really problematic for me was that times an appointment has to be kept. Like if I had an appointment, somebody had to visit me at 12 o'clock at noon, and they were not there exactly at 12 o'clock, I would get nervous that something happened to them. And if I called them and I couldn't get a hold of them, I would be completely 100% convinced that they had died. And there was one time I had to have a visit from a friend, and I had cooked dinner, and I was just like, I mean, might as well just sit and eat, because I mean, he's dead, he's not coming. So I went through the entire emotional register of losing parents, siblings, friends, and stuff, because I was completely convinced that they had died in a car accident because I couldn't get a hold of them. So that affected me also quite a lot. But then, like to figure out what I could do, what were my work capabilities, I never really finished anything school related. I went to like a youth club where I was tested to see what could I do. But that was kind of like canceled like a couple of months into it, because I had thought that I should kill the children in that youth club, which is not very good when you actually want to work with children, which I've always wanted. So I was committed to a psychiatric ward, got new medications and stuff, and they could not determine what was the triggering factor. So I actually got a disability pension. And after that, I just didn't really work. I had like a protected work, we call it, where I would work like 11 hours in a nursing home, just coming and doing social things, play games, and talk with the old people. But that doesn't really take any education at all. So,
And was it a challenge for you to not be able to do things that pretty much everyone is able to? How did you deal with that?
There was some shame attached to it in the beginning, but there came a point when I was completely, in a sense, free of worry of me being sick, where I had complete 100% acceptance of I need to have help and it's fine. So there was this one time when I went to a disco out at night, and this lovely young lady came over to me. It's like, oh, huh, who are you? And my name is Klaus. And okay, so what do you do? Well, I have a disability pension because I'm paranoid schizophrenic. And she was like, oh, turned around and left. And I was like, okay, maybe it's not the first thing I should mention to people, you know. So just to say, like, for me, I was completely at ease and relaxed about it, but it's not everybody who can handle just being told that's the first thing somebody is paranoid schizophrenic. So yeah.
Did you have hope to heal this? Like, did the doctor say that there was a way to heal it? Because as far as I'm aware, I don't think they say that you can heal. So did you have hope that one day you would be able to function, or that you would somehow you would function with it or heal completely? Or did you believe that you would have to live with this the rest of your life?
I was convinced that I had to live with it for the rest of my life. That there was no cure, there was nothing to do. I just had to settle in the life that I just have, or that I had. So I mean, and I was never told that it was possible to get rid of it in any way. So that was just how it was. So I think, like, to a certain extent, I'm very flexible in my life. So when something, well, it is what it is, and then okay, well, then it's just what it is. So I kind of just like went with it and felt, to a certain extent, in an unhealthy way, I lived in an acceptance of I was worthless and it's okay.
So if you thought you were going to live with this your entire life, obviously we're talking together today and there's no issue. So what happened for things to shift into what they are now?
Yeah. Well, one thing that can be maybe a little difficult to understand is when people look at me now, that you look fine. Nobody can see that I have been sick at all, but I'm so fortunate that I have an old photo of myself from before, when I became sick, that I kind of like can show to actually document and prove that okay, there was something wrong. Um, and I know that it will be put up in the video and stuff when in the editing and such. But my way out of my situation was through faith, and it came in a way as a coincidence, you could say, because I had a friend who was invited to church and different things. At one point, he asked me if I would come to church, and I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" I've never had anything against faith or Christianity or any other religion for that matter. And then a thing that happened that was really weird for me, and that is that I came into the church, a new place I'm not used to being at, and a lot of people I don't know, and I had complete peace. No fear, no anxiety, nothing that to make myself nervous at all, which was not normal for me, because again, my paranoia would always make me on edge, or make me careful about, or trying to protect myself in case things would happen. So that was a little weird, that I just had complete peace being there for the first time. And later on, I kind of like just went there by myself once in a while, just to have something to do and not to turn the daily rhythm in the weekends too much around. At one point, there was someone who asked me if I wanted to join first a youth meeting and later on a Bible study group. And both of the times I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, they make good food and there's a cozy time, and why not? I like to get new knowledge. There was no point where I was thinking, who is God? What's the meaning of life? I need to have answers to these things at all. I mean, I was settled in my life. I'm worth nothing. I'm mentally sick, and my life is not going to change at all for the rest of my life. I'm going to take this medication until I die, and that's it. That's life for me, and I accept it. So I was not like on a truth quest or seeking anything that had to do with God or anything at all. So that was not my motive at all. Then at one point, I through the Bible studies, I kind of like learned what Jesus had done on the cross, and that kind of like resonated with me again because of my self-harming behavior. I had a dream of how I wanted to die if I could choose myself, and I wanted to die in an Iron Maiden. That is kind of like the old, like a torture instrument with as a sarcophagus with spikes on the inside, where you would be kind of like pierced and bleed to death in pain and agony. Historically, I know it's never really been in use, but still, I didn't know that. And it doesn't matter, but that was kind of like how I wanted to die. Because in that way, like my self-harming behavior came as a way to punish myself when I felt I've done things wrong. And I felt that I had done things wrong and I deserved to die in a horrible death in this violent way, because then I would pay a price for the things that I felt that I did wrong. I also had a period where I thought about, okay, so what country could I go to and make somebody really angry so that they will execute me in this way? And when I found out that Jesus has taken that price on the cross, I was like, I would like to believe in that. And it was not that I believed that God existed per se. It was more the idea and the concept of Jesus that I wanted to believe in. And for some period, I have had violent nightmares where I would wake up with the feeling of my teeth being pulled out of my face or being crushed beneath big rocks and stuff. So I started to pray and say, Jesus, I pray that you will bless this night and let me sleep good and sound and protect my dream from violent and bloody dreams. And ever since I did that, my nightmares just completely disappeared and stopped. And I've not had them since at all. And then another thing, and that's kind of and this is the only time when I've been able to rationalize and not being paranoid. And that was because I started to learn about Bible stories and stuff. There's the story in the Old Testament where Noah is in the ark and out after the flood and everything. And God makes a covenant with Noah and put the rainbow as a sign of that covenant, that he don't want to destroy humanity again. So for me, okay, so I believe in that. And because I believe in that, now that I hear this story in the radio about this meteor, where previously I would always think the earth is going to be destroyed now because the meteor is going to kill everybody. But now I could say oh, well, because I believe in the Bible, God will not allow it. So therefore, there's no reason to be paranoid or be angry or be afraid. So it's the only time that I've really been able to rationalize and not trigger paranoia, which have never happened before because of the irrationality of what paranoia really is. So that's kind of the only two things I remember where I could actively use my faith in a sense that was more the idea and concept of Jesus than a true conviction that God exists.
It's very, I don't know, it's very, it's not strange. It's fascinating that the first time that you went there, you didn't have any paranoia, because like you said, it would happen every other new place that you would go to, at least from the way that you speak, that's what it sounded like, or anytime that you met new people, and that didn't happen. So I'm curious to know, as you continue to go to church and to engage and to learn about Jesus, did that have any impact on your symptoms, your paranoia, and your schizophrenia?
After some months, what happened was, and when I really got convinced, was that I went after a Sunday service. I went to a pastor and I asked him, "Would you pray for me for my paranoia, because that's something my medication never really does anything to?" And he prayed for me. I didn't have any special experience. I didn't feel any kind of emotion or electricity or whatever through the body. It was really a mundane experience where I really didn't think anything happened. And when I walked away, I just okay, that was fine. But in that moment, I was completely, momentarily healed from all paranoia and schizophrenia. And I didn't notice until the week after, when I was on my way home and it was dark and nobody was out to kill me. And that was a really weird experience to walk and nobody's out to kill me. What's happening? And suddenly to be able to be in situations where I could do this suddenly. I mean, it was really, really surreal and weird to experience that. And then later I was hanging out with some people, and there was some who got into a fist fight or something. And I was just smiling and laughing because they're not coming to kill me. I mean, really, they normally do. So yeah, it's I don't know how to explain it. The feeling of freedom and relaxation, where I know that normally I would be completely running home scared for my life. I think like I don't see like an immediate effect of my Christian life other than after that prayer, my paranoia completely ceased. And from that point on, it was still a struggle with my thinking, but it was more having to live with this my entire, like most of my adult life, and as as far back as I remember, I've been used to this thinking and the mindset and the habits and stuff, and there has been a lot of things that had to be worked with and broken down and see things in a different way, and it's just been taking a lot of years for that to happen. So I would say it's been a slow process afterwards to have my mind renewed and the view of myself, so my self confidence, my self esteem, and my sense of worth slowly was building up, so that my thinking would not be the same as it was before. But it's been a slow process that took a lot of years.
How do you explain that this condition that you had, at least from being a teenager, possibly from being a child, that nobody has a cure for? How do you explain that it was cured in an instant?
I mean, I don't know how to explain it other than that God did it. Because like the only difference was that from before to after was that somebody said, "In the name of Jesus, be healed." The prayer was probably a little more than that, but that's basically what was said. In the name of Jesus, be healed, and it was gone. So, in the name of Jesus, had some kind of power, and I was set free in a way that nobody could imagine. And it was not like a long process of figuring things out. It was like I was completely free of these things. And for me, it like in that moment, I was like, okay, God really do exist. I was completely convinced about it, because it's just impossible to have somebody as paranoid as I was, just from one moment to the other, just completely free without anything happening.
So, what happened after this? You were on disability, not able to do a whole lot, like you mentioned. So, once you got healing from it, were you able to build a life, get a job? How was that?
So I suddenly I could do things I couldn't do before. So flying is no longer an issue. Driving cars is not an issue. Now I have a driver's license. I didn't have that before because I was too afraid to get it. Like the biggest thing when it comes to fear was like I would for many years, or at least several years, New Year's Eve I would stay inside and just watch the new firework, because like in Denmark and some it's not all countries in the world that you can just freely buy your fireworks yourself, but in Denmark you can. And the combination of drunk people with fireworks and being paranoid is not very good combination. So I would always hide on the inside of a house and just observe and watch, because I was too afraid of being out in that, because I was afraid of being blown up. Now, the most crazy place for fireworks New Year's Eve in Denmark is at the City Hall in Copenhagen, the capital, where it's like it feels like a war zone. There's so much noise and fireworks going off all over the place. And on New Year's Eve, a year and a half after I got healed, I went there, and I had complete peace inside, no fear whatsoever. So that's just like wow, yeah. So I could certainly do. I mean, walk over bridges or take that bicycle, like no fear at all. I could all the things I couldn't do before, everything that limited me, I was free to do it. And so I've been on a journey since to figure out what is it that God He wants to do with me in my life. So one thing, which is what I also do now, is to share my story of what God has done to encourage people and help where it can benefit people. I started to work with the rehabilitation of drug addicts and alcoholics in something called Teen Challenge. That's like a worldwide program. So I worked with that until this December. And now God has something new for me. I took an education as a social worker a couple of years ago. I finished that. And on the way also, I went to a psychiatrist, and together with the psychiatrist, I was lowered in my medication. That took like 4.5 years, slowly to get out of it. And I am now completely free, and I haven't taken any medication whatsoever for, I think it must be like 6 years now. And yeah, now I'm going towards a new adventure. I recently got married, which was also seems completely impossible before I got healed. So I was married here in April, and now I'm going to be a pastor and join a pastor team in a small church here in Denmark. So it's been quite a ride and quite an experience the last 10 years. It's been well, also like last 15 years. It's 15 years since I got prayed for and got completely healed.
That's incredible. I am so happy for you that you were able to finally build a life for yourself. And congratulations on your marriage, by the way. This is amazing. Like, thank you so much for sharing your story. One of the last two questions I have for you actually is, now that you've had time to reflect on your whole life and stuff, how do you make sense of all the things that happened to you?
It is a good question, and I don't really know what to make of it in a sense, because on one hand, I believe that God is in control of things, and that was kind of like one of the earliest faith crisis I had, in a sense, was why did God allow me to be sick? But I've kind of gotten behind or past that and not really blame God in a sense, because I also remember there was one point before I got healed, before I became a Christian, all these things, where I actually thought like, if I could change anything in my life, I wouldn't do it, because everything I've been through, I was still sick at the time, has made me into who I am. So I'm not ashamed of my life. I don't regret anything that I've done. There are many things I'm not proud of, but everything I have done with the best intention, with the capabilities that I've had. And where I am because of everything. I am the sum of all my experiences and decisions, and whatever whatever have affected me through my life. I am all of that. So for whatever reason, God allowed it to happen, and I can use that now. I've heard someone one time say that often our biggest strength is our biggest weaknesses. So I can now be an encouragement to others and use my story as an encouragement. I have had conversations with people about, okay, so is this spiritual? Is it not spiritual? And I don't know how much it is. I think the more I hear about it, especially with that all the things that I experience is so violent and bloody and stuff, that there is some kind of demonic activity that infect me. But at what age did something be let into my life, and how much of it was demonic and how much of it was a physical sickness, I don't really know. But what I do know is that I have been sick, and God has healed me, and that's like the most important thing. For me, it's not so important for me to know exactly why it happened, or the reason behind it, and all these things, because I can't change it anyway. It's an interesting talk to have, but it can also be it can be in a sense a challenging talk, because the spiritual part of life is not observable in a sense, and therefore to talk of something that is so abstract can be difficult to kind of grasp in a way.
Well, thank you for talking about it. Thank you for hopefully being the hope that someone needs. That is my hope personally for this conversation. And to end it off, I want to ask you the final question, which for you, I'd like you to give a message to someone who is struggling with mental health, whether it's schizophrenia or anything else, or someone that has thoughts about, anything that we've talked about. What would you say to them personally?
I would say, first and foremost, there is nothing wrong in being sick. There's nothing wrong in having a mental illness. There's a lot of taboo about it. It is something that you can't really see. It's not so visible as a broken arm, and it's not everybody who can understand it at all. But I would say there's nothing wrong in being sick. There's nothing wrong in needing to have help from others. So I will encourage anybody who is struggling to seek help, professional help, and not be afraid of taking medication, because medication can help. Medication can stabilize so that you can receive other help psychologically and mentally. So that's one part I want to say. Another thing I want to say is to give Jesus a chance. I will not say, and I will not guarantee that anybody can just be prayed for and get healed. I have Christian friends who still struggle with some mental stuff, who is prayed for and is not healed. I don't know why God heals some and others are not healed, but I trust that He knows best. Like I have my father, he died from cancer, and I had him to some prayer meetings, and he never got healed through that, and I don't know why, but I know that I have been healed, and I've seen other people have been healed. And before my healing, I found meaning, that it gave me some peace. It gave me meaning. So even though you don't experience that, I would still encourage people to give Jesus a chance to make sense of things and have something bigger than yourself to help you through whatever it is that you're going through. And even if you don't want to give Jesus a chance, I would say don't give up. Don't give up hope on life. It may not be a life completely fulfilled that you can live like everybody else, but you can still have a life and have some sense in your life. It may not be every country in the world that have great healthcare and all these things, but I've found a way with all the things that happened with me to navigate through it, got used to it, and found some meaning in whatever it was that I lived through. But don't give up, and include people in your life and talk about things that is difficult, so you don't walk alone with the things. You are not alone. There are other people who are struggling, and there are people who can relate to it and talk to you about it. And I think as the last thing, there is nothing wrong with you, in the sense that you are not wrong as a person. You have value and you matter. So even though you may think that nobody would miss you, yes, people will miss you. And if you want to, just retire from life and stuff, don't do that, because there are still people who would love you, and there's still purpose and a meaning for you. You can be something for others, even though you have limitations in your life. So there are possibilities to make sense of this world in mental struggles, and there is an opportunity to be a resource for others, even though that you struggle. Life is not over because there are those limitations. There are limits to life, but there is still life. So, and I think that is what I want to encourage people with, to find hope, not give up, and continue to fight and stay afloat in life, and find joy and meaning in the small things. I mean, you may not be able to travel the world or go to concerts with a lot of people and stuff, but there can be so much beauty in small things, and scaling down, and don't expect to, and don't compare yourself with others' life, and especially not on social media, and just find what matters for yourself. Give Jesus a chance. I think that's what I want to encourage you with.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Almost False podcast. If you found value in it, make sure to hit the like button or leave a review and share it with a friend maybe. And if you'd like to know a little more about Klaus and I's opinion on the cause of this whole thing, we talked about it in the after show and discuss the spiritual implications of his story. You can find it on our website or by clicking the extra content link in the description. Also, a lot of you know that I'm going on a break for the next few months, which means that the episodes will be more spread out than they usually are because I only have a few that are pre-recorded. But if you'd like to still get amazing testimonies like this one, I'll be releasing some members-only episodes, interviewing viewers just like you who have amazing stories. And that's also something that I want to continue doing consistently in the future. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can go to almostfalse.net and become a member, which also helps us to keep this podcast going. If you're a little confused about what's happening with me, I released a video recently explaining the whole thing, so go check it out. But anyway, that's it for this episode. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed.